Four. Okay. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm sorry, I just lost it there. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Yes. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great, great. Okay, so today I would like to talk in as much time, the time that we have, I'd like to talk about what's coming down the pike at us for 2017. I've titled my forecast The Year of the Uninvited Guest, and I've subtitled it actually as well because it's about awakening and activism and doing no harm. Is my video on?
Yes, yes, it's all fine.
Good.
Okay.
So, you know, when we look at a chart, we look at an event, we look at a horoscope, you know, it could be anything. It could be a person, a place, a thing, an event, a wedding. It could be a pet. It could be lots of things. And we have to remember that when we look at any moment in time that's captured this way, that we're really looking at something that's part of a whole cycle. We're not looking, that single moment doesn't stand on its own. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Arrival. It was fascinating because it really showed that our moments in time only have meaning when we see them in context to what came before and what will precede it, or what will come after. So it's important, you know, to understand 2017. To begin with, we have to I'd like to take a brief look at 2016 to understand these cycles and to realize that, you know, we're part of a continuum, that we're not just stuck in a single point in time, and that there is a context to everything that happens. The chart itself has no meaning. We know that as evolutionary astrologers without the context. And the context, you know, is also determined by the consciousness that's brought to it. The chart is a flat, two-dimensional thing. It's a single axis. When the vertical axis of the consciousness that's brought to it, that's when it comes alive, and it takes on some meaning. So I'm just gonna, I've prepared some slides just to demonstrate what we've been saturated with for the past 12 months, because I think it's significant. We've come through a very impactful year, and all of us in one way or another are feeling it intensely, if not in our own lives, at least in the collective that we're part of. It's been a very, very eventful year in many different ways. In the United States, you know, we had an election that was full of uncertainty, and you know, I think it's a good example that astrology is not necessarily well served as a predictive science, and I think what happened at ESAR this year is a really good example of that, because especially when we're dealing with the unexpected and the unpredictable. And around the world as well, we had populism, which seemed to be the key word. I don't see it as much as populism as more or less elitism, but we'll get into that more as we move through this. The sense of individuality that has emerged this year really is beginning to not just ramp up, but, you know, reaching a peak of experience. And the loss, you know, what we felt in our own hearts, the people who chose this year to leave the planet. Sometimes I kind of tell myself maybe they knew something that I wish that they knew. But at any rate, we've all decided to be here. We've chosen to be here, and we all have some work to do in that regard. But it was quite a year. And I'd like to say that, you know, 2017 is going to be different, but well, we'll talk about that. But it wasn't all bad, and I'm not going to go through all these things. They'll be here in the video. You can read about them. There are lots of really good things that did happen this year, especially scientifically, technologically, because one of the Uranus in Aries is specifically going to produce a lot of great advances in science and create some great improvements that we really are, we really will need going forward. So, whether or not the age of Aquarius is actually upon us has been debated for a long time. But I contend, it's my personal opinion, that the coming year is going to carry a very intense Aquarius and Uranus impact. Uranus is the great awakener. This hexagram from the I Ching, I think, really is a great leadoff. It says, shock brings success. Shock comes. Laughing words. Ha ha. The shock terrifies for 100 miles, but he does not let fall the sacrificial spoon and chalice. And I think there's an instruction here for all of us, because what's happening is of necessity. It's what's on our evolutionary path in front of us, and actually we're in the midst of it. But chaos has the function of deconstructing what has become crystallized. It opens the space for new form to emerge. It dislodges discomfort. There's an emotional inertia which initiates action. And this is the archetypal signature of the year that lies ahead. Shock and awe, interestingly enough, Shekinah, there's a similarity. There is a relationship between that word and that phrase. And it describes the glory of the divine presence. And, we all have expectations. We have our own personal imagery and concepts and beliefs as to what this means. So sometimes when it shows up in a different form, we don't recognize it. We're confused, and I think that's the chaos. The chaos is the confusion of not understanding the moment in terms of the continuum that we're passing through. So those of you who know me know that I've done a lot of writing recently about Uranus and Aries. Aries was the uninvited guest to the marriage of Paris, and without going into all the mythology, what happened there ignited the Trojan War, which everybody's probably pretty familiar with. It's one of the great events of mythology. Eris was a dwarf planet. It was only discovered in 2004, and so we don't really know that much about it yet. But it was related to the goddess of chaos and discord, and it has a 500-year orbit. So the last time that Eris moved through the sign of Aries was back in the Middle Ages. And at that time, it illuminated the lives of Joan of Arc and Teresa of Avila, but it also brought us the Spanish Inquisition, and it brought us the discovery of the New World, exploration of North and South America. But contingent with that was also the decimation, the genocide of the native peoples of North and South America by the diseases that was brought by the explorers. So it has a shadow, and it also offers great promise for us. Eris entered Aries in 1927, and it immediately conjoined with Uranus, and I think all of us, again, know what happened in the 20s and 30s. We had the crash of 1929, the rise of Hitler in Germany, of Nazi Germany, the outbreak of World War II, and we had the Great Depression. But also in those years, John Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were born, who each had great impact on their time, laid the seeds, if you would, for a new paradigm in the time that they were passing through. So there's tremendous potential, and there's also tremendous trauma that can occur here. So 84 years later, we have Uranus and Eris joining up again. And I think the collages that I showed you kind of display what we have experienced as a result. The two planets conjoined twice in 2016, and we have one more coming up in August of 2017. So the reason I point this out is because one of the base notes of this year is the TSquare, of Jupiter opposite Uranus squaring Pluto. And we're all very familiar with the Uranus-Pluto square by now. I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about it. We should all be pretty well versed in it. We've seen its epic 7 conjunctions, and we've experienced literally what seems to be the disintegration of our planet in some ways as a result. Well, this square is not over by any means, any stretch of the imagination. I would suggest rather that it's actually just beginning. What will happen in the next 40 years will be totally, determined by the effects of this tremendous pulse, the energetic pulse that we've been experiencing. So it's going out with some flair, with in a flame of glory, if you would, as Jupiter comes along and opposes Uranus and squares Pluto. We know that Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It expands, it enlarges anything that it touches. The traditional astrologers, consider it to be the greater benefic, but it doesn't always work that way. If it touches something that's not necessarily so beneficial, it's not going to all of a sudden reverse course and convert it. It's going to expand whatever's already there. So it's triggering this pulse, and it's kind of like giving it one last boost, if you would, before it ends. The TSquare is going to remain in orb through April of this year, and I've got all the transits here for you. Again, you have them here. You can refer to them. But Jupiter will oppose Uranus actually through November. There'll be two pulses of it, and then it squares Pluto through October. And then Uranus and Pluto will remain in orb actually through May of next year. And here I've delineated all the different squares and oppositions that come along. When Uranus transits, one of two things happens. Either we're sucked into the psychodrama, or we objectify, and we objectify the event and make a considered response. So again, this is what we're all moving through, and this is the consciousness part. It's the consciousness that's brought to these events that's going to determine which of the outcomes is happening. And as we see, there's a lot of psychodrama right now, but there are some who are objectifying this and recognizing what needs to be done. They're not dropping the sacrificial chalice. They're holding on to their intentions and standing their ground and doing what they know needs to be done. Jupiter and Uranus correlate to how we self-actualize according to what we believe to be true. Jupiter's our truths. So what we're seeing here is, we are what we believe. It determines what we say, how we act, what we do. It's actually the foundation of our personal realities. It becomes our reality. And what we're seeing is a clash of realities. When you believe something, that makes it real. And these realities are grinding together like tectonic plates. It's why we're seeing the tensions and the emotional outrages and the emotional displays that are really filling the news and with what's happening. So with Jupiter opposing and squaring, it sets up this T-square between these three planetary giants, and it will persist, as I said, through April. It creates inner and outer events that expose us to how we are thinking, but maybe acting in another. And the Pluto square adds the additional stress of our soul intention. Even if we're not aware of it, there's an angst that occurs when we recognize or feel, intensely that something is amiss, something is off course. And this is a cardinal formation. So it's going to create, with Pluto basically as the engine, it's going to create inner and outer experiences that will provide direct emotional experiences, because that's how we learn. We don't really know anything until we've experienced it emotionally. And the good news here is that it's going to create the opportunity for people on a broad scale to experience emotionally what their choices have been. a good example is with the U.S. election. And, I don't want to get political. I'm not, I don't think that's important. But what is happening is that people are going to given plenty of opportunity to reflect on the choices that they made, or in some cases of the choice that they didn't make, of their abstention from the whole thing, which in some cases can be just as detrimental. So it's very good from my perspective, because it's a great wake-up call. It's going to awaken a lot of people, going to shake them up and make them realize that, wait a minute, I really have to look at this, and this is really the base note of what's happening. These inner and outer events are going to catalyze us with a new truth. And that's going to release us from the limits that we've placed on our own thoughts, on our feelings, and on our emotions. It's going to initiate crisis. This is an initiation that expose the dramatic discrepancies between what's fact and what's fiction. We've had Saturn squaring Neptune all through last year, where we were faced with what's real and what's not real, what's true and what's not true. The memes were about fake news and all the stories that were swirling around. Well, that's still going to continue, but we're going to have the opportunities to actually see them in the flesh, if you would. They're going to manifest. They're going to show up in ways that we can begin to make some choices about what we've been believing and what we really think is true and not true. And we're going to be confronted, as I said, with the uncomfortable consequences of those choices that we've made. One of the crises are caused in part because when we self-identify, when we defend how we're self-identified, then we create conflict. And so that we go head to head with others, even if we're not consciously aware of it. There is a barrier that gets created because of our beliefs, because we have to hold on to what we think is right, because that's our identity. And the definition of insanity is when we don't know who we are. So it borders on that type of survival instinct in terms of what we believe. And with Pluto in Capricorn squaring Jupiter and Uranus, this is the weight of consensus that's really influencing our choices. We're consensus itself, what we accept as on a collective scale to be true, is really being stressed and really being pushed to its limitations. This is also about relationships. Where this is Libra and Aries. So, with Jupiter and Pluto, we're seeing how what has come before has structured what we believe to be true. So it's our relationship with others, it's our relationship with our beliefs, it's our relationship with ourselves. But in the long run, Uranus and Aries will generate traumas and is generating traumas that allows new ideas and understanding so that growth can be an unfolding of natural soul expression. Uranus awakens the ego towards soul realization by generating both epiphanies and traumas. The good news here, and there's always good news, and I think it's all good news, even though it's difficult. We know as EA people that the squares and oppositions is what we need, not the trines. But we do have a really beneficial trine from Saturn to Uranus as well. And trines need to be consciously engaged with. They don't happen by themselves. They can be tremendously facilitating, but we have to work with them. We have to step into that space and commit to it. And this is our responsibility. This is our recognition that these traumas and this chaos and that's what's happening in our world is our responsibility. Doesn't make it our fault or that there's any blame involved. But it's up to us to do something about it. We can't just sit back and be complacent. I think that this is all happening because, as a collective, we've been lulled into complacency. We've kind of grown comfortably numb. We can sit, in front of our computers in our safe, offices or den or wherever our computer is, and, we're isolated. And but we've lost this sense of that there really is a collective, and that we really all are in this together, that we're not little separate things, that we are community, whether we're all together in the same room or we're all not. It's important that we accept the responsibility for the trauma and the chaos. And this is the awakening of the activism. This is where we take charge of it and not just be tossed by the waves of what's happening. There's still a lot of Neptunian energy that's in the flow. We're still have Pisces node. We still have Neptune near it. We've had all this Neptunian energy all year. So we're still being tossed. We're still at sea to some degree. We're still, our boundaries are kind of missing. But Saturn is going to help us. Saturn and Uranus are going to help us find those boundaries again and kind of regroup and determine, where's the center in all of this, and what is it that we need to do. And this will happen as Saturn is going to turn retrograde for 4 months this year. It's going to back up. Go pretty much all the way, back through Sag again, and he's going to revisit all its structural integrity, everything that's been created, basically over its 2-year transit of Sag, and we're going to re-examine, what we have made, what's real, what have we manifested, what is the reality that we're holding on to, and then finally at the end of the year, it's going to move into Capricorn, and so 2018, really getting ahead of the game, but 2018 with Saturn and Capricorn can be a tremendously productive year. Saturn and Capricorn is going to produce some results. Just looking at my notes here to see if I've missed anything. We're gonna look and see, what we have not accomplished and where the responsibility and authority lies, all under Jupiter's truthful scrutiny. So on May 9th, the lunar nodes are going to ingress into Leo and Aquarius. I've kind of categorized this. I said this is a new identity. This is an exuberant, creatively expressive, and needing recognition holds the center for the potentials and the probabilities of the Lunar North node as it journeys through the sign of Leo. This is going to restate the already intense mix of Aquarian energy, laying the foundation beneath the Uranus transits. There are going to be more shocks. There's going to be more awakenings along this evolutionary pathway. And it's going to reverberate at a personal level in each of our lives, in our families, in our work, and it's going to reverberate through the collective as well, wherever we are on the planet. Leo correlates to our creative self-expression. Our primary creation, though, is ourself. Leo is me. Aquarius is everybody else. The Leo-Aquarius polarity expresses in a positive way as conscious self-creation, an objective self-awareness that keeps an inner space open for reflection and proactive self-adjustment. And the objectivity of Aquarius blends with Leo's self-focus, unifying and balancing the polarity. Excuse me. But in its shadow, Leo holds the dramatic displays of egotism and narcissism, which we've, again, experienced across the globe in many of the leaders of the world at the moment. The personality can become so self-absorbed that the perspective and the objectivity is lost, and it seems that somehow everyone else is just like somehow background to their universe. And again, that's kind of part of the complacency, where the self-interest is overridden. What's really important, and the fact that we're on this spaceship Earth together. Aquarius takes the Leo's egoic desire for self-expression and it projects it outward. It becomes our creative individuality and our collective ego, if you would. Our ego with our individuality within the collective. Our individual identities are transformed so that the identity of our mass consciousness will then also change. So this is the root of it. As each of us transforms and objectifies and begins to recognize what's real and what's not real, then the outer world itself will change. When we're kids, we're taught that the outer world is big and we're little, and it's exactly the opposite. We're big and the outer world is little. When we change our thoughts, when we change our intentions, when we change our beliefs, our outer world can change or does change in the blink of an eye. So this is the dynamic. This is what's happening. In its shadow, Aquarius and its ruler Uranus relate to the trauma that's held in individuated consciousness. Individuated unconsciousness. Uranus is our personal repository of all the repressed memories of the events that we like to think are dead and buried. They may be buried, but they're not dead. Uranus correlates to the trauma that's associated with those painful events, as well as to the PTSD that can result, and projects these memories back up into our awareness, often with dramatic flares so that they can be healed and resolved. The lunar nodes is our evolutionary pathway, from karmic past to probable future. And it's referenced in every moment and activated in every present moment by the moon, by our emotional body, by our sense of fear, our sense of love, our sense of connectedness. It's our most conscious part. And it's in each moment that the future is determined. It doesn't, there are probable futures. There are many ways the future can go, but it's what we choose in the moment that's going to determine which future we're going to experience. A new identity. I read this exuberance can show up as displays of radical self-entitlement, radical self-importance. And again, I think we've seen this, whether it's driving down the road or, listening to the news. It's everywhere around us. People just feeling totally self-entitled to do whatever they want. We might feel apprehensive regarding survival issues, and our values and correlating requisite priorities are going to become our focus concerns. We're really going to get down to the basics to really determine, what we need and what we don't need. And the self-righteous and self-entitlement allows angry words to become violent actions. One of the things I think that we will experience is we'll see self-organizing groups of like-minded souls coming together, just like these Zoom meetings, where people will realize that community is what we need to survive, that we cannot survive on our own, especially as things start to get murkier and perhaps a little bit more dramatic. Long-standing programs that are supported by self-interest, elitism, and exclusivity are going to be challenged by humanitarian and egalitarian imperatives. In a way, I don't want to say I'm pleased, but when I see all the exposure in this country, in the US, of the misogyny, of the racism, of the hatred, of the, in essence, it's good. It's not good that it's there, but it's good that it's being exposed. If we had 4 more years of the same old, nothing, there wouldn't be any impetus for change. I'm not sure that the way it's going about is the way that I would have chosen it to happen, but it's in the long run, it's a very good thing, because if it's outed, then it can be dealt with. It's no longer hidden. It's no longer in denial. We've all been in denial about this, but in many ways, these emotional distortions that are part of our national psyche have been there for 200 years, 250 years. And everybody's kind of like glossed over it and glazed over and says it's not really there anymore, but it is. It's alive and it's not well. So we have, again, 2 eclipse seasons coming up in 2017. The first eclipse season, The first eclipse season occurs in February. And it's in the self versus others archetypes of Aries, Libra, and Leo Aquarius. And it's going to be an opportunity for belief systems to be shattered and rebuilt as we recognize what the truth is, and realize that truth, and the truth itself implodes. excuse me, March especially steams up as Jupiter perfects its opposition to Uranus and its square to Pluto. So the T-square perfects in March, right in the eclipse season. In August, the second eclipse season unfolds along the nodal axis of Leo and Aquarius. And we have a lunar eclipse on August 7th at 15 degrees of Leo. And then we have a second at August 21st at 29 degrees of Leo. And these are both very significant points in a sign. 15 degrees in a fixed sign is a friction point. The fixed energy has moved to the point of where it's beginning, in momentum, it's moving in its shift, in its transition from one archetype to another. And in these fixed signs, it's a very difficult point. It's a real sticking point. It doesn't want to go mutable. It's very comfortable where it is, and it wants to hold on to it. So there's a lot of friction there. And the 29th degree can also be a very difficult placement, because it's the final degree in the sign, and the transition to the next sign cannot occur until all the unresolved issues have been resolved. So anything that's been denied or backburnered, it's like a balsamic archetype, if you would, where whatever we've put off or has been denied to us or hasn't gotten done needs to get done so that the transition can occur. And what's interesting about the August 21st eclipse is that it is the first eclipse in 38 years that is not only total, but will be observable across the entire continental United States. And there are many insights and things that are said about eclipses. The one that everybody agrees on is that if you can see it, you're going to feel it. So the 21st is dramatically intense. And again, I have the dates here. You can check it all out. It's a little premature to go through all these charts, but needless to say, the energies that are going to be released are opening a space where the growth needs to occur. The crises occur when the energy cannot move in any other way, and this is what eclipses will accomplish. I use the Gemini rising chart for the United States, and interestingly enough, I've been reading some Robert Karl Jansky, who was one of Jeffrey's teachers. And he went through a really interesting rectification of the U.S. chart using eclipses, and he came away with the understanding that this chart actually is the most accurate chart, which is what Jeffrey believed. And I'm wondering if it isn't the source of Jeffrey's use of this chart. But that's a whole another topic for discussion. The eclipses occur in the 4th house and in the 10th house in the Gemini rising chart. So in mundane astrology, the 10th house is our leader, it's our president, it's the government itself, and the 4th house is the people, and it's security. There's something else that's very interesting about these eclipses, that eclipses do come in cycles, a Saros and the Metonic cycles, 18 and 19 years, where they come back to the same point, or the same geographical point in the sky. Well, these eclipses refer back to 1998, and in 1998 we had the Paula Jones and Monica Lewinsky scandals, and the United States House of Representatives initiated hearings to impeach Bill Clinton. It has wide-ranging implications. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up or depress anybody else who may feel the opposite, but I think it's a very, very interesting correlation to what's coming up later this year. And there are also many psychics who also have made statements regarding things along these lines. The other thing that's interesting is that Uranus and Eris will have conjoined and stationed retrograde before this last eclipse. There will be stark contrasts in beliefs that are going to be exposed. And it's going to create more objective self-awareness. And this increase in traumatic events will affect whose effect will cause the erosions of conditioning patterns, which is what the base note of this is all about, and what Pluto Capricorn has been doing all this time. We need to shake up what's gotten stuck. And the core role of archetype is to quicken and accelerate the evolution of the soul itself. So this is all good. This is what we want to happen. Again, you know, it may not come in a pretty package all tied up with ribbon, but it's not about that. The takeaway here is that responsibility, Saturn, falls upon each of us to recognize, Uranus, that we are creating the future, Leo, by our own choices, Aries, in the present. This year, we must courageously, and that's also Aries, move upward through these evolutionary foothills that are leading to a summit that looms in the 2020s. And I think most of you are familiar with what's coming up. We have the Jupiter, Saturn-Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in 2020, and then we have the US-Pluto return in 2027, and a Neptune opposition, US-Neptune opposition in 2027 as well. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Nobody's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. So we've got just 2 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Less than a minute. Well, thank you. You guys are great. I am honored and privileged to be part of you. And as I said, I'm humbled to sit here before you to be able to do this. Thank you.
Daniel, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel.
Daniel, do you know when Eris moves into Taurus?
I believe in late 2018 or 2019.
Right, right. And Uranus moves into Taurus?
Also in 2018.
Uh-huh. Yep, that's not far away. It's just next year, isn't it? Yeah. Any other questions? We've got about a minute and 10 seconds.
Daniel, this is Tashi. Hi, I'm going to talk a little later today, and I wanted to tell you that the Rosicrucians also came up with that 213, the Gemini rising chart, because they said that they were all mostly astrologers and they wanted all that stuff in the second house so the country would have money. So it's really, really old where that chart comes from. That's
one of the supporting arguments, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, I'm so focused on that Uranus rising and the Pluto ninth house. It just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, me too. I like this chart a lot. And also the Sibley chart, I'm going to tell everybody a little bit later, it's the ingress chart for June of the year that the I'm not American. Is it 1776? I should know. Yeah. So it's the ingress chart angles before, and that's why it still works. Those ingresses are pretty powerful.
Astrology works, so all astrology works.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yep. But your presentation was great. I'm sorry I didn't get all of it, but I'm going to watch it on Zoom.